Good morning, students. Today we will continue our discussion on particle confined to three-dimensional box. And in the last class, we have discussed up to the derivation part, wherein we have got the solutions of particle confined to one-dimensional box. Let me write it once again. Let me recall the solutions of particle confined to three-dimensional box. The wave function is given by it is the product of three sine functions, and also it also depends upon three quantum numbers. As the particle is moving in three different directions, so each direction we have one quantum number, that is n1, n2, n3, and all these quantum numbers can start from minimum value of 1 and then they can proceed up to infinity. And the energy of the particle confined to rectangular box is given by h cross square pi square by 2m multiplied by n1 square by l1 square plus n2 square by l2 square plus n3 square by l3 square. Now suppose had it been the case that if the particle is confined to a cubical box instead of a rectangular box, if it is a cubical box, so what would be the solutions? The solutions are fairly simple. For a cubical box, the length of the box is going to be identical, that is same. Therefore, the the normalization constant, it is going to be square root of 8 by L cube, then multiplied by again three sine functions. Okay, wherein in this case the L is going to be same in all the three cases. And what happens to the eigenvalue, that is the energy, that is h cross square pi square by 2ml square multiplied by n1 square plus n2 square plus n3 square. So this is a special case of particle confined to three-dimensional box, right? A cubical box, you have the length of the box is identical in three different directions. That's the only difference. So if you just make these changes, you will get these numbers. Now let us look at the properties of the solutions what we have got. So I will begin with the discussion of the energy. So the energy, unlike the particle confined to one-dimensional box, the energy is going to be different. So it is different, and also it is somewhat complex as well. Why I said complex is that, let us look into systematically. You will understand why I mentioned. So for a ground state, for a ground state, any system that we are discussing, that for a ground state the quantum number is going to be the minimum. And in the case of particle confined to one-dimensional box, we have only one quantum number. Therefore, n start from minimum value of 1. Therefore, its energy is something. So likewise here, there are three quantum number. Therefore, what is the minimum value of n1? That is 1. n2, it is also 1. n3, that is also 1. Therefore, the lowest energy state of a particle confined to a cubical box is given by 3h cross square pi square by 2ml square. That is the energy. Okay, that is the amount of energy that a particle is going to be possess if it is confined to a cubical box, right? Now, suppose what happened to the excited state. So the excited state means that you can write down the excited state by making either n1 quantum number can be 2, or maybe n2 can be 2, or n3 can be 2, right? So any of these quantum numbers can be 2, and the remaining quantum numbers can be 1. That is the state which is slightly above than the ground state, that is E111, right? And such an energy state will possess energy 2 square, right? It is 2 square plus 1 square plus 1 square. That is obviously 6h cross square pi square by 2ml square. That's the energy of a particle confined to one-dimensional box if it is in the first excited state. you can realize that these three states, whether it is a 2-1-1 state or whether it is a 1-2-1 state or 1-1-2, all these states are going to have the same amount of energy. Therefore, we call it as, this is what we call it as a degenerate states. Degenerate state means that the energy states are having identically same energy. We have three states with the same amount of energy. What is the amount of energy? That is 6 h cross square pi square by 2 ml square. So we have three states with equal amount of energy. Therefore, such a situation, what we call it as a threefold degeneracy. Threefold degeneracy. So the excited state of a particle confined to a cubical box is actually having threefold symmetry. I mean, it's basically threefold degeneracy, which means is that there are three states. Okay, all three states are having identically same energy. Okay. Similarly, if you want to proceed further, what will be the upper state? The second excited state. The second excited state is the state where two of the quantum numbers can be 2 and the other quantum number can be 1. So in that respect, so we can have three different states with identically same energy. That is E221, E212, E122. There are three states. Again, the same. They will possess the same amount of energy. That is 2 square plus 2 square plus 1 square. That is all the three states will have 9 h cross square pi square by 2 ml square, right? So again, it is a threefold degeneracy. So that means that you have three states which are having identically same amount of energy. Then what will be the next state? The next state is obviously, we will think that 222 is the state which will have higher energy, but in fact, if you go to the other state, that is 311 or 131 or 113, that state, the amount of energy is nothing but 3 square plus 3 square is a 9, 9 plus 1 plus 1, that is 11 h cross square pi square by 2 ml square. That is the amount of energy. Suppose if you take energy of 222, that is going to have energy of 12 h cross square pi square by 2 ml square. Therefore, so this state, that is three states, those are 311, 131, 113. All these three states will have slightly lower energy as compared to an energy state that is 222 energy state, right? So the 222 state again non-degenerate, but the lower state, that is again it is a threefold degeneracy. Okay, so likewise we can discuss keep on by varying the different quantum numbers, because n1 can vary from 1 to infinity, similarly n2 and n3. Therefore the combination, we can have different combination and permutations, and then accordingly that we can have a ladder of energy states. And if you keep on discussing like this, that the next energy state will have a six-fold degeneracy. Okay, likewise, we can continue in discussing. The point is this, as compared to the particle confined to one-dimensional box, the energy states of a cubical box or a three-dimensional box is generally is going to have, sorry, cubical box is going to have a degeneracy. Some of the state will possess threefold symmetry or six-fold symmetry and so on, whereas some of the states will be non-degenerate. That means you'll have only one state with a unique and precisely some amount of energy, and other state will be which will be entirely different from the other states. For example, E111, that is the ground state, is entirely a different energy state, which will not be overlapping with any of the other energy states. Similarly, E222, similarly E333. So all these things are said to be non-degenerate. That means you have only one state with a precisely some amount of energy, right? And then what will happen to these degeneracy? For example, you have a 211 1 to 1 or 1 1 2. So all these states are 2 to 1 or 2 1 to 1 to 2. All these states actually are said to be threefold degeneracy. So what will happen, suppose for any reason if this cubical box is basically changing, I mean cubical box is a symmetric, and then if the symmetry of the box is changing, then naturally the energy states, okay, especially those the degenerate states, three-fold symmetry degenerate states, similarly six-fold symmetry degenerate states are going to split into different energy levels. So they are no longer degenerate, they will be non-degenerate. So a set of energy levels will possess lower energy, and then a set of energy levels will possess somewhat higher in energy. So it is just similar to that of a d orbital. So usual case they are same, but then ligand theory, probably you have studied the transition metal chemistry. Okay, so usually all the 5d orbitals are actually T2G and AG orbitals are same, possess the same amount of energy, but then provided if they are approaching in different directions, so they will basically split into different energy levels, right? So likewise here also is the case that if you have a particle initially which is basically a cubical box, but then for some reason if its degeneracy is lost, that means if the cubical box is changing slightly into different thing, for example you have a cube, and then you cube, what you can do in one particular direction, you just elongate. So it is possible. In chemistry we will also come across different octahedral complexes. Suppose if for any reason that the ligands for if the bond length, if the bond length are basically different for two the axial ligands, then compared to the other four ligands, then naturally there is a loss in symmetry. Then such a situation that we will see that the degeneracy is lost, and then there is a split up in the energy levels. Okay, and this type of this particular concept probably you may study under some different course like John Teller distortion, which is actually is one type of distortion wherein the degeneracy will be lost. Okay, initially you will have a degeneracy, but then because of the different situations, especially the as the ligands are approaching different directions, so there is a change in the symmetry. As a result, that the energy levels will degenerate energy levels will split into non-degenerate energy levels. Okay, so and then having understood the degeneracy of a cubical box, let us move on to discuss, move on to the topic of wave functions of cubical box, how they look like. So this is again, in the particle confined to one-dimensional box case, also we have seen the energy levels, and also we have seen wave functions, and pictorially how they are we have seen. Likewise here we will try to understand very briefly the wave function, how they look like. And the wave function expression is, as you can see here, it depends upon three variables, that is x, y, z, and also it depends upon three quantum numbers. It is again 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So all the possible values that n1, n2, and n3 can take. Now the question is, what is the ground state wave function? The ground state wave function is nothing but, if you want to get it, basically you have to substitute the values for n1, n2, and n3 is going to be 1 in all three cases. Just now we have seen. Then when you substitute in the wave function psi 1, 1, 1 of xyz is equal to square root of 8 by L cube sine pi x by L sine pi y by L sine pi z by L. So these are the that is the wave function, the complete wave function. Now such a wave function, how do we understand? It is very simple. It is very complex, right? In the case of particle confined to one-dimensional box, the wave function is straightforward, wherein we have only the x term, that is psi sine pi x by L. That was the only word. That is the only term that we have. So we don't have much problem in understanding, because only one function is there. We know how sine function behaves, and for different values of x can be substituted from starting from 0 to L, and then we can understand the wave function, how it changes. The ground state is going to be something like this. But it looks very difficult, but if you carefully observe, this is very simple, very straightforward. and very simple. You may surprise the answer. So you can see here, so when you can't understand as a whole, maybe you can try to split up into three different parts and try to understand. So this is one part, that sine pi x by L, that is the x component, and then y component is the sine pi y by L. Similarly, z component is sine pi z by L. Okay, these are three different things. And what are these exactly? And if you look at carefully, these are exactly the ground state wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box, isn't it? What is the wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box? It is square root of 2 by L. There is some normalization constant. So let us not worry about normalization constant. But the function appearance majorly depends upon the wave function. That is the function that is sine pi x by L, isn't it? So the ground state, of course, it is n pi x by L, but for a ground state, n is 1. Therefore, it is essentially sine pi x by L. It is obviously nothing but the ground state wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box, right? If the box is pointing, or if the particle is basically pointed along the x direction, isn't it? Similarly, the other component sine pi y by L is going to be, again, it's the ground state wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box, as if the particle is moving along the y direction but not the x direction, right? Because you have a y variable, right? So there can be a situation where you can have a situation that other direction, y direction. So if you take, this is a x direction, a y direction, and then there is a z direction. So you have three different components. Sine pi x actually represents the ground state energy of a particle confined to one-dimensional box, as if the particle is moving along x direction. Similarly, sine pi y represent the y component, the ground state of a particle confined to one-dimensional box, as if the particle is moving along the y direction. Similarly, sine pi z represent the z component. So we know exactly how they look like. Yeah, this is what I have written here, and we know exactly how these functions are, isn't it? We have seen the ground state wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box. What is the appearance? The appearance is very simple. The appearance is a curve. Okay, you have 0 and then L, and starting from L, so it will basically increase, and then it will reach a maximum, and then it decreases. That's how the function behaves, right? Isn't it? Do you remember or not? Now, what will happen if it is in the x direction, y direction? Y direction also will be the same thing. It doesn't change, right? So as the box, okay, as the particle reaches the center of the box, that is L by 2, then it will have a maximum value, and then as it moving the other two directions, opposite direction, the wave function basically decreases, right? The wave function is like this, right? Similarly, z direction also, the wave function will be in the similar direction. Now, to understand the ground state wave function of a particle confined to cubical box, it is the product of these three. It is not, now we understood, okay, it is the product of three wave function, as if the particle is moving respect to directions. Okay, now how the product would be? Where it will have a maximum? It is obvious that nothing to think much. So the center of the box, that is that the center of the box, you have a maximum value. Whether it moves, whether it is actually one dimension along the x direction or y direction, it doesn't matter. At the center, we have a maximum wave function, right? Here, sine pi by 2, sorry, L by x, if you can replace L by 2. L by 2 is nothing but the center. So L by 2, if you replace this L cancel out. So it is in the denominator. So pi by 2, sine by pi by 2 is the maximum value. So other directions, the wave function basically decreases, right? That understood. So this also same thing, this also same thing. So that means when you take the product of these three components, obviously at the center, that is L by 2, okay, the wave function will have a maximum value. As it is moving away from the center of the box, then naturally it will have a it will have a minimum value. So at the edges of the boxes, obviously it is having a zero wave function. So you can just imagine a sphere. It is nothing but a sphere, and at the center you will have a maximum wave function. As actually it is, as we are moving away from the center, the wave function actually vanishes. So when it reaches the surface of the edge, at the edge, the wave function is zero. So this is what the ground state wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box. So as a whole, it is difficult, but then if you can actually split up into three different components, and then we can arrive at some kind of conclusions and some kind of understanding. Is it clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me move on. Then let us look at the other wave function. The other wave function, that is the excited state, first excited state wave function, you can just take any, as I told you that it is three-fold degeneracy. We have three states out there. And of course, we can discuss only one function, but then other functions, okay, like in this case, I'm going to discuss about one-to-one. But then the one-to-one will not be so different from the 112 or 211. Okay, the only thing is that their orientation will be different. So if one-to-one, generally it will be the way we have taken the axis coordinates is basically y is along this direction, right? X is this direction and z is this direction. Therefore, so this particular thing y we will try to understand, but then the other directions you can obviously imagine. So I am going to discuss about with the one-to-one and the wave function obviously for the first excited state. So you can just replace the quantum numbers in the wave function that is given here, and you will get that sine pi x, and you will get sine pi z by L here, whereas the y component, it is going to be 2 pi y by L. That is the first excited state wave function of a particle confined to a cubical box. Now, how do we understand pictorially this, how this actually will look like? As I told you that the same protocol or strategy that we can follow to understand the total wave function of the first excited state. As I told you that you can see that the sine pi x is one wave function. How it behaves? Okay, at the center of the box, it will have a maximum value. Sine, okay, but then it will be pointed along the x direction. Then what about sine pi z? Sine pi z is again, it's like it's the ground state wave function of a particle confined to 1D box. Okay, 1D box, but along the z direction. The box is pointing along the z direction. Now what happened to the center? The center, sine 2 pi y by L, it is not the ground state. If you can just recall the wave function of wave function expression for particle confined to one-dimensional box, it is actually the first excited state. It is the actually n is equal to 2 over there. Okay, n is equal to 2, how it look like? N is equal to 2, how it look like? At the center, it has a maximum value or a minimum value?
Minimum. L by 2 minimum.
So it is like one complete cycle of a sine wave. You remember that initially it will, it is 0 at x is equal to 0, it is 0, and then it reaches a maximum when x is equal to L by 4, and then when it reaches x is equal to L by 2, it is 0, and then again it increases negatively when x is equal to 3 L by 4, it is maximum negatively, and then when x is equal to L by L, then basically it is again 0. Right? It is basically increasing and decreasing to a 0, and then increasing negatively and again coming back. So it is a one complete sine wave, right? So you please try to understand that at center, what is the value? That means L by 2, if you substitute, that is the appearance. If you can recall, that is fine. The other way is that you can just simply do this. When L is equal to L by 2 here, okay, this L and this L cancel out, this 2 and this 2 cancel out, sin pi, it is 0. This particular product, the contribution of this particular term at L by 2, that is the center, it is going to be 0. Right? If this component is 0, what happened to the total wave function? Obviously, the total wave function also will be 0 at the center of the box. Is it clear to you? It doesn't matter what value the sine pi x by L is contributing. Similarly, it doesn't matter what sine pi z by L is contributing, because 0 multiplied by anything, any number, it is 0. Therefore, at the center of the box, the wave function is totally 0 in this particular case. Okay, then what happens? The other appearance, how it will be? The other appearance is actually, we can actually yeah, this is what I have written. This is the ground state wave function of a particle confined to 1D box as if it is moving along the x direction. The middle component, that is sine 2 pi by L, that is the first accelerated state of a particle confined to one-dimensional box as if it is confined to along the y direction. The other is along the z direction. Now, how it actually look like, the wave function, total wave function look like? Well, I will try to plot as I think I'm not very good artist, but then I will try to give some kind of pictorial representation. As I told you that the center of the box, the wave function is going to be 0. So you can imagine this is the center. So you can just imagine, wow, it's very difficult for me drawing like this. I will try once again. So you can imagine like this, a plane that actually bisecting, okay, so a plane exactly at the center, okay, a plane exactly at the center, and then this particular plane, on this plane, the wave function is going to 0. Okay, a plane at the center of the box, that is L by 2. This is L by 2. So at the center of the box, the wave function is totally 0. Here, the capital psi 1, 2, 1 is equal to 0. Then obviously the other side, it is nothing but, the other functions are increasing. Okay, the other directions, it is increasing, therefore it increases. Oh well, I have gone. Again, drawing this will be very difficult, but you can just obviously make out. So leave out that plane, this directions, you will have a lobe of the wave function, okay, and you will have another lobe of wave function. Only at the center you don't find any wave function. Okay, only at the center you will find that the wave function is 0. That means this particular plane, the wave function is 0. Why? Because at the center, L by 2, that is sine 2 pi, that means the wave function is 0. So other directions, you will find that a wave function, there are two lobes, and these two lobes at actually 3L by 4, and also this side L by 4, you will see that they will have a maximum thing. So as they are actually moving away from those points, the wave function actually vanishes. Okay, suppose if you are at 3L by 4, it will have a maximum value. So you can just put a thicker shading here, and then as you are moving this direction, the wave function will be 0. And similarly, if you are going towards L, that is the length of the, please remember that our length of the box is L, so that is going to be 0. Similarly, if you are moving away from L by 4, either this direction or that direction, it doesn't matter. The wave function, again, it is going to be 0. Okay, so I think maybe I will show some other picture so you will understand that these way directions are somewhat different, but then you can obviously make out what these are. As we have already seen what a p orbital is, it doesn't it will not be very different from those that you can imagine that you will have a sphere. So you will have a sphere, so and you will have another sphere of electron, the wave function, which will at the center it will have a maximum. You can see here there is a thicker shading, and here again at the center in this particular thing there is a thick dots are there. Thick dots indicate the maximum wave function, and light dots, that means you have wave function value is less. So likewise you can also think of that the other wave functions like psi 112 or psi 211. These wave functions can also be imagined. That the only thing is that they will be pointing either y direction or the z direction. That's the only difference. So I don't have much tools to draw this diagram, but in the usual case that normally I used to draw with a chalk piece with the different colors, but obviously, unfortunately, I don't have any tool to explain this concept. But these are not very difficult to imagine because you have seen how a p orbital is. Okay, so it is exactly like a p orbital. At the center, that is at the p orbital. How do we draw the lobes? This is one side. Okay, one lobe. The other side is another lobe. We draw the same manner. It will be there. There will not be any difference. And at the center, so you can see that you have a center of the box, and the center of the box, the wave function is going to be 0. Center of the box, we just imagine a plane. Everywhere on the plane, the wave function will be 0. But as you are moving away, then the wave function will be one side it is a positive, the other side it will be negative. Why? Because you just imagine that the sine 2 pi y, that the y component in one side it is positive. Only in the if you are in between the limit 0 and L by 2, then it is positive. But suppose if you are in between L by 2 and L, within those limits the wave function is negative. Therefore, when you are multiplying with the other two components, that is x component and z component, then obviously it is going to be negative, right? So one side lobe is going to take the negative part, and the other one it is going to take the positive sign. That's the only thing. So yeah, these are the other two wave functions, like psi 211 and then psi 112. So only just you have to change the quantum numbers. Secondly, we can have three different wave functions which are degenerate. Now, having understood this, I think with this more or less I have completed, but we can keep on discussing the second excited state. But the only problem is that I have a limitation in drawing those diagrams. But those things are very difficult. It's not so different. They will be looking like x, y, d orbitals. The other two orbitals will be like the d orbitals. So we can actually draw those things. In the normal course, I used to draw all those diagrams, but now I have a limitation. But these are not very difficult. You can just read some textbook and try to reproduce or try to practice those diagrams. Now, with this, more or less, I have covered the particle confined to one-dimensional, three-dimensional box, and the special situation is the cubical box. For cubical box, we have the length is going to be same, so that's the only difference. Now, accordingly, we will have wave functions and then the degenerate energy states. So with this, the complete derivation and everything has been covered. Now, I will move on my discussion. We will discuss one problem. We will discuss one problem that is related to the particle confined to three-dimensional box. Okay. So here is a problem for you. Consider an electron in superfluid helium. Superfluid helium. Okay. wherein it forms a solvation cavity with a radius of 18 angstroms. Calculate 0-point energy and energy difference between the ground state and excited states by approximating the electron by a particle in a three-dimensional box. Okay, I hope that everybody can read this problem, which is there on this slide. Consider an electron in superfluid helium, where it forms a solvation cavity with a radius of 18 angstroms. Calculate 0-point energy and the energy difference between the ground and excited state, first excited states, by approximating the electron by a particle in three-dimensional box. Okay, of course, it is a cubical box. I hope that you can follow this or this particular concept, right? So what you have to do is very simple. It is given the radius of the box is given. They have cavity means it can be a spherical, so they have assumed like it is a spherical. But in the problem, they are asking us that you can apply the three-dimensional box. You can approximate the problem to a three-dimensional box and then find out the energy difference. That's what they are suggesting. But what exactly happened that somehow the one electron has been trapped in a liquid helium. So it is at 4 Kelvin. So they have trapped one electron in a cavity. And that cavity radius is given to be 18. Okay, 18 angstroms. Now, it is very straightforward. What you have to do is that if radius is given, what is the length of the box? Diameter is going to how much? It is the double of the radius, right? So the 36 angstrom is the total cavity, I mean the diameter of the cavity, right? Now they are saying that you can approximate, okay, and take the problem or the equations or expressions of the particle confined to three-dimensional cubical box and then derive the energy levels and then find the difference. That's all. Okay, then it is very straightforward. Yeah, it is very straightforward. You can actually calculate, that is the expression E11 is equal to h cross square pi square by all those things. You can write down and then you can calculate the E11 first, that is the ground state. We know very well ground state energy level is the E111. So the quantum numbers, all three quantum numbers are going to be 1. So you can substitute those things and then substitute everything. So electron means you know the mass of the electron and you know the Planck constant and other. No, L is known. Now L is 36 angstrom. So angstroms is equal to, an angstrom is equal to 10 power 10, right? So all those things you can just substitute and then find out E11. Similarly, first excited state, we have 3 states, that is E11, E112, E121 or E211. It doesn't matter, all these things are degenerate, therefore you can take anything, it doesn't matter. So you can, the next calculation is that you can calculate. So when you calculate this, simplify this, then you will get 87 million electron volt. Then for the first excited state, then the quantum numbers are going to be different. That is 2 square plus 1 square plus 1 square plus 1 square. So it is basically 4 plus 6, basically 6 by L square. That is what it will come. So L is basically 36 angstrom. So you can substitute the values of electron mass and everything and Planck constant, and you will end up the answer is going to be, in this case, 74 million electron volt. 74 million electron volt and all these things. Okay, that is the energy difference. That is the energy of the first excited state. Now the difference can be calculated by subtracting one from the other. That is delta E. That is going to be again 87 million electron volt. This is how that one can solve this problem. And this particular problem has been given in this particular journal, that is Physical Reviews B, and reference is given. So the experimentally people have determined the energy gap by this. I mean, this is approximate method that we are calculating, but the experimentally the cavity size has been calculated, experimentally determined by some method, and wherein they have found that the experimental value is 105 million electron volt. Okay, experimentally it is found that the energy difference is 105 million electron volt. So if you approximate it to a three-dimensional box problem, cubical box problem, it is going to be it is 87 million electron volt. Obviously, it will not match because we have a lot of, it is approximate method. It is not a very accurate method. So it is taken to be cubical box, but the cavity is not a cubical, right? Cavity is somewhat spherical in nature. Therefore, naturally, it will not fit. It will not match with the experiment. Okay, this type of problems are these are some of my favorite problems which may be asked in the examination point of view. Okay, so I think again it is coming. Let me write this. Yeah. So with this, we have completely covered the particle confined to three-dimensional box. And there are associated problems like particle confined to two-dimensional box. I mean, that is not very different. Its solution is not very different from this particular solution, what we have studied or what we have seen till now. So it is not very different. It can be easily understood. You can just see any textbook that you will find the derivation part. It's fairly easy. You can go through those things. As I said that the syllabus is very vast, and we will focus on some new topics, but it is not very difficult. If you have any difficulty in understanding particle confined to two-dimensional box, you can just let me know. And the energy expressions, I mean eigenvalue, and then the wave function, how they are, and most of the textbooks it is available. So I suggest all of you to go through those topics. Okay, so before winding up this particular thing, I just wanted to discuss some general aspects, having understood particle confined to one-dimensional box solutions as well as particle confined to three-dimensional box solutions. So there are certain general aspects which are really important for us to understand as we proceed further. These topics may come across. These topics may be used to understand those problems in a better way. So therefore, I thought to spend a little time on this particular aspect. There are a few things. One is the linear combination of stationary states. Linear combination of stationary states. What is linear combination of stationary state? First of all, what is the basic difference? What is the definition of stationary state? Stationary state is a state where its probability density or probability doesn't change with the time, isn't it? So this is something that we have discussed. Okay, if the potential of the system is not changing with the time, the potential of the system is not changing with the time, there can be states which are referred to as a stationary state, which are similar to that of stationary waves that we come across in a string attached between two fixed points, right? So in those cases, that these are said to be stationary because the probability doesn't change with the time. Similarly, expectation value doesn't change, right? So these are some of the things that we have already seen. What is the definition of a stationary state? Now, what I'm saying is that, so what will happen, suppose you have two stationary states, and what will happen if you take the linear combination of the stationary state? Okay, now you may ask me the question, sir, what happened? Why we are imagining such a linear combination? Yeah, well, there are certain cases where we will come across in our chemistry and especially in spectroscopy, the linear combination of states. So I will give the justification at the end of this particular topic. Okay, for the time being, please accept my statement that there are certain stationary states. Okay, let us imagine we have a stationary state, and these stationary states, if you combine them linearly, what will happen? A linear combination of two stationary states, can it be a stationary state or not? That is what I'm trying to explain to you. Now for this, I'm just considering two stationary states. One is psi 1 of x comma t, which is nothing but psi 1 of x, multiplied by the e to the power or e raised to minus ie1t by h cross. Because please remember that any wave function, if I have written only x part or y part or z part, those wave functions are basically what we say it is a spatial part. But time part is something that it is there always. Okay, and the complete wave function actually indicates means it should have a time part and it should have a spatial part. So normally we don't discuss the time part, but then time part is also there. So let us imagine that psi1 of x comma t, let us imagine that a particle is moving along x direction and its complete wave function is going to be the product of a time part and is going to be the product of a spatial part. So that's what it is taken. So I am going to take one more wave function because we need two wave function, two stationary states, right? So let us imagine psi1 of x comma t, capital psi1 of x comma t, which is nothing but psi1 of x e to the power minus ie1t by h cross, that is one stationary state. Similarly, let us also consider another stationary state, psi2 of x comma t. There are two stationary states. Now I am going to combine them linearly. So how I am going to do that? The linear combination, okay, linear combination is I am representing with the psi1 plus 2x of t, the linear combination, psi1 plus 2x of t, which is equal to, of course, we just take add them together. So when you add them together, obviously that particular wave function definitely will satisfy the time dependent Schrodinger wave equation. It is quite obvious. Okay, if you have a two stationary state, and if independently these two stationary wave functions are basically satisfying the time dependent Schrodinger wave equation independently, and their combination also will satisfy the time dependent Schrodinger wave equation. So there are several theorems. This is also one of the theorem. Of course, it is not very much relevant to our topic, but believe me that it is true that the linear combination of two stationary states is going to be definitely is going to satisfy the time dependence shown in the wave equation. Okay. Now what I'm saying is that we are taking the linear combination, but as such they may not satisfy the time dependent Schrodinger wave equation. So if you can have a normalization constant like this, then definitely it will. Okay, when you're taking the linear combination, then therefore it has to be normalized. The linear combination definitely will satisfy the time dependent Schrodinger wave equation. Now what I'm going to do is this. Okay, the probability, whether the probability will be a stationary state or it will not be a stationary state. That is something that we are going to prove. Now to prove that, so what we have to do, so the probability is nothing but psi star psi d tau, integral psi star psi d tau is the probability. Okay, so I think it is correct here, there should be d tau, somehow it is missed. Okay, now that is what, but in this case it is not a psi, it is actually a linear combination of psi, right? So that is what we want to prove. The linear combination is whether a stationary state or not. That is what we are interested in. Therefore, instead of writing psi, we have to write psi1 plus 2. Okay, psi1 plus 2. So that is what it is written here. Now you can substitute the values, okay, but psi1 plus 2 is nothing but this one, square root of 1 by 2 square root of, okay, so you can just substitute the values psi1 plus 2 of x comma t and then write down. So initially it is written here, right? And later on what you can do, these here there is 1 over square root of 2 and there is 1 over square root of 2. So you can just take it outside the integral because they are just a constant. So moving outside, it doesn't matter. So you can move this and both of them move outside. So 1 over square root of 2 multiplied by 1 over square root of 2, it is going to be 1 by 2. It is written. Now psi 1 of x comma t and then psi 2 of x comma t, and those are already defined here. Those are already defined here. So you can substitute those values. So having, if you can substitute, then you can see here there is a plus b and there is another a plus b, right? A plus b, a plus b. There are two things. Of course, you have to multiply those things. But before that, what we have to do, there is a star. There is a complex conjugate notation there. So this complex conjugation that when you are taking inside, you have to apply. Basically, if there is a imaginary, then it has to be applied accordingly. So now, so now what you can see here, that the you have one a plus b and then a plus b. So you can just multiply a plus b multiplied by a plus b. It is a square plus b square plus, okay, ab plus ab. That is what it is, right? So I'm just writing those things and in a careful manner, that here there is a complex conjugate notation is there. Therefore, we have to be very careful in moving that inside. So now when I multiplied this and this, here psi 1 doesn't have any complex conjugate, so it doesn't matter for me. I can just keep on. Now here there is a complex conjugate. So when you are applying here, this wave function, we don't know. It can be imaginary function also. Therefore, it is better that we should retain the complex conjugate notation here. So I am just retaining this, and then multiply it by psi 1 of x. Okay, and multiply it by, actually we have the time part. There are two time parts are there. Okay, that is e to the power minus ie1t by h cross. Okay, what is the complex conjugate? We have to take the complex conjugate of this. Okay, there is a minus I. If there is a minus I, then obviously we have to replace with a plus I. So this particular part is going to be e to the power I e1t by h cross, but from here e minus I e1t of h cross, right? So it is nothing but e to the power x multiplied by e to the power minus x. What is the answer? E to the power x minus x, that means e to the power 0, that means 1. Okay, so therefore that particular time thing is actually is becoming 1, so therefore I did not write it. Okay, similarly, if you multiply this and this, psi 2 of x multiplied by e to the power minus e2t by h cross multiplied by the other one, if you can multiply, again what you will get is psi 2 star of x, psi 2 of x, right? The other part is going to be 1. It's also going to be 1, therefore it was not mentioned here. But you have two cross terms, that is when this is multiplied with this and when this is multiplied with, sorry, when this is multiplied with this, okay, this is the third term, and when you are multiplying this. So you have two more cross terms, but these two cross terms will are written here. You can just see here the same fashion, like psi 1 of x, but there is a complex conjugate. Therefore, it is written psi 1 of psi 1 star of x, psi 2 of x. Okay, here it is psi 2 of x is there, multiplied by, there is a minus e1, minus of minus here, e2 is there. So basically the time components are basically combined here. So this is going to be e to the power minus I e1 minus e2 multiplied by t by h cross. That is one part. Similarly, when psi 2 star, okay, when this is multiplied, when this is multiplied with the first term in the second term, then it is going to be psi 2 star x psi 1 of x multiplied by e to the power I e2 minus e1 e1 of t by h cross. I hope that is a very simple multiplications The only thing is that we are using exponential term. That's the only difference. So we can easily write down those things. Okay, so obviously this is what you are going to get. Okay, and you can see here when you look at carefully, what is this term? This term, it doesn't have any time component. What about this? Even it doesn't have any time component. What about this? Yes, there is a time constant. There is a time dependency. Okay, this is the product of the two wave functions multiplied by a time thing, and again here that you have a two wave functions again multiplied by a time thing. So therefore, my answer is very simple. That uh, uh, the answer is very simple. So as we have a time dependent uh, terms in the probability, then obviously the linear combination of two stationary state is no longer a stationary state. That is the conclusion. Understood? So as you have seen that the linear combination, the probability of a linear combination, we tried to evaluate, and what we found was that there are two terms which doesn't have any time uh, uh, component, but there are two other components wherein the time component is there. So therefore, it is obvious that the linear combination of two stationary state is no longer a stationary state. Okay, so it is basically changing with respect to time. Okay, for example, if you can just imagine how this look like actually, how you can imagine this particular concept. So you can just recall the ground state wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box. So what is the wave function? The wave function, of course, it's just a pictorial representation, but it is not very accurate diagram. But to illustrate the point, I'm just made a small animation kind of thing. You just try to follow this. So initially, the wave function will be at a time t, the probability of the wave, the probability of the particle will be at this location, right? As time passes, okay, as time passes, its probability is actually changing. Okay, so in between the two limits, the probability is going to change. Okay, in the normal case, that you remember that the probability remain constant. But here, the linear combination of two stationary states, as time passes, it changes with time. Initially, at one place, the maximum probability will be at one place, but later on, it changes. It changes. I have made it as like in a systematic fashion, but it may not be very systematic. But in the case of linear combination of the stationary state, it can be very randomly, they can change it. But within the limits, their probability is going to change. That's what I mean is. Okay, and that's what it is. So why we are actually discussing this, already I have hinted why we are discussing such a topic. So linear combination of states we also come across in spectroscopy, especially when we are dealing with lasers. You know that they are very powerful, high intense light is actually interacting with the matter, and as the matter is interacting with the light component, electromagnetic radiation, then we, instead of normal case, if it is normal light is interacting normally, we come across stationary state. But then when lasers are interacting, so we will see a linear combination of stationary state instead of normal stationary states. Okay, in such a situation, the probability is not actually time independent. It is time dependent. That means the probability actually keep on changing. Okay, within the framework. And another topic which I would like to discuss is the orthonormal functions. Okay, for this, let me have the, this is the wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box. Psi n of x is equal to square root of 2 by L sine n pi x by L, where n runs from 1 to infinity. Now, suppose you just imagine that what will happen, that I have psi1 of x multiplied by, so what, suppose if I evaluate the probability of a particle confined to one-dimensional box by taking the first wave function, that is the ground state wave functions. What is the answer of this? Can anybody tell? What is the first, the ground state wave function? Sine pi x by L. Square root of 2 by L, obviously it is there. Square root of 2 by L, okay? Sine pi x by L multiplied by square root of pi x by L dx. What is the answer?
1.
Yes. So these are normalized, right? So normalized, since it is normalized, this answer is 1. Now I will give you another task. Like suppose if I have a an integral like integral psi1 star x psi2 x dx. That means in this case you have to take the ground state wave function of a particle confined to one-dimensional box and also the first excited state wave function, that is sine 2 pi x by L. If you evaluate that particular equation and then calculate the answer and then try to apply the integral limits, what would be the answer? Any guess? Okay, if you don't have a guess, maybe I will give the answer, but you can take up. I will give clues also. This answer is going to be 0. Okay, I suggest both of you, all of you, to basically go through the integrals or work out the integrals. No need to go through, just to work out. The integrals are fairly simple. The first integral is that this is the integral. It is obvious that this integral already we evaluated in the case of particle confined to one-dimensional box. This 2 by L integral 0, x runs from 0 to L sine square pi x by L. So this particular sine square pi x by L, the answer what you get is basically L by 2. So 2 by L is there already from normalization constant and multiplied by L by 2. So this is going to be 1. Okay, this is straightforward. Similarly, you can evaluate the cross terms. Those are like square root of 2 by L sine pi x star square root of 2 by L sine 2 pi x by L dx. This is the integral that you have to evaluate. So I have given some kind of clues also. Of course, there is some, I did some calculation. So this answer, it is very straightforward. Again, you will get the answer 0. Okay. So with this background, let me give the definition. What do you mean by orthonormal functions? Let us consider psi1, psi2, psi3 are a set of functions, and these are said to be orthonormal or orthogonal. Orthogonal and orthonormal, both are slightly different, but in a loose term, both are used without knowing the knowledge. But orthonormal should be there. So orthonormal functions means that if you evaluate, okay, if you have a set of functions and these functions, when you evaluate the integral, like integral in minus infinity to infinity, psi m star psi n is equal to 1 if m is equal to n, and if is equal to 0 if m not equal to n. Suppose psi1 star psi1 dx integral, if you evaluate, it should be 1. Similarly, psi2 star psi2 dx, okay, integral psi n star psi n dx. So if that particular condition is satisfied, then we say the functions are said to be normalized. The functions are said to be normalized. That is the normalization condition that we have already seen, that in fact it is the requirement of a state function, right? Then the other condition, what I'm saying, that okay, another condition is that, okay, if you evaluate psi1 star psi2 or psi2 star psi3, or in general psi m star psi n, if m not is equal to n, obviously we can prove just now in the case of particle confined to one-dimensional wave functions that we have proved that the answer is going to be, that particular integral is going to be 0. Okay, so a set of functions are said to be orthonormal functions. Orthogonal condition means that the, okay, if you evaluate the cross term integration, I mean, that is, suppose if you have evaluated psi1 star psi2 or psi2 star this, okay, or psi1 psi1 star psi5x. So this integral, if you evaluate, if and the answer is going to, if the answer is going to 0, then such a set of functions are what we refer to as a orthogonal functions. Okay, if the integral is going to 0, it is orthogonal. If the integral is going to 1, when m is equal to n, then it is a normalization. So together, what we call it as a, this particular set of functions are said to be orthonormal functions. Orthonormal functions. So please excuse me for typing wrongly. It is orthonormal functions. That is the thing. And in fact, let me tell you, this is not very surprising. It is the property of Hermitian operator. If you remember, some of the theorems also available. Eigenfunctions of Hermitian operator. Hermitian operators are orthonormal functions. Okay. Similarly, you can also find a theorem in most of the textbook prove that the kinetic energy operator is a Hermitian operator. Hermitian. Okay, kinetic energy operator is a Hermitian operator. That is also another theorem. Okay, so these are something that you should keep in mind whenever I asked you, or anybody asked you to check the orthonormality condition, then you have to check it. Orthogonal means that the cross terms. Okay, cross term, the integration of the cross terms. And normality means integration of the same terms. That is what you should remember, then do it. Similarly, there is another property, what is referred to as a completeness. Completeness. What is completeness? Let us imagine that psi1, psi2, psi3, and so on are the non-zero wave function of a system. Then you can also imagine an arbitrary wave function. Okay, you can also imagine an arbitrary wave function, that is f of x. Suppose if this f of x can be expressed in terms of the non-zero wave function of the same system. Okay, suppose if f of x can be written in terms of, okay, it can be, if it can be evaluated in terms of the known non-zero wave function, then the set of functions, what we call it as a complete set, and this particular condition, what we call it as a completeness. Completeness. Okay, the set. Okay, so if this condition is met, this and then all these functions are said to be completeness, form a complete set. Thank you for listening. Maybe if you have doubts, probably I can take your doubts in the next class.